I built my empire from the ground up. When I was younger, I had nothing but hunger in my belly and a dream too big for most men to handle. I clawed my way up from the dirt, made my fortune, and by the time I turned 50, I had more money than I could ever spend in a lifetime. But money, it buys comfort, not loyalty. At 72, I was a man of means, wisdom, and patience. Olivia, she was my second wife. A woman far too young for me, but beautiful, charming, and dangerously persuasive. She was 40, and at first, I thought she loved me. I thought she saw something in me beyond my wealth. I was wrong. I had given her everything. A mansion on the hill, luxury cars, designer clothes, the finest jewelry. But more than that, I had given her family a life they never could have dreamed of. Her father, a man who had never worked a real job in his life, now lived in a home I bought. Her mother, who once sold cheap jewelry at flea markets, now wore diamonds I paid for. Her brothers, both reckless gamblers, were saved more times than I could count with money I handed them. And her sister, an envious little snake, had the audacity to act like royalty because she had access to my wealth. I was their provider, their safety net, their lifeline. Until one evening, when that illusion shattered. Dinner that night was a grand affair. The dining table stretched long, draped in silk, set with silverware that gleamed under the chandelier's light. Olivia sat across from me, her deep brown eyes flickering with something unreadable. Lucas, her 5-year-old son, played with his food, oblivious to the storm about to come crashing down. Then, with a smirk that sent ice down my spine, Olivia put down her wine glass and dropped a bombshell. Lucas isn't yours. The words cut through the air like a blade. I blinked once, twice. She leaned back, folding her arms, relishing the moment. I needed a real man, Ethan. A long silence followed. I studied her face, searching for something. Remorse, hesitation, fear. But there was none. She was proud, triumphant, even. I exhaled slowly, not in anger, not in pain, but in realization. I had built a kingdom and invited vipers to feast at my table. Laughter, not mine, but hers. And then, like a signal had been given, her family joined in, mocking, sneering, reveling in my humiliation. Her father was the first to speak. Come on, Ethan. Did you really think a woman like Olivia could love an old man like you? Her sister scoffed. We always told her to find someone better, someone younger. You were just a stepping stone. Her brothers chuckled, exchanging smug glances. One of them muttered, Guess the old man finally figured it out. And then, the final knife in my back, Olivia's mother. She took a sip of wine, smirking. We told her to do it, from the beginning. We told her to find a younger, richer man before you. Well, keeled over. A deep chuckle rumbled in my chest. Not of amusement, not of rage, but of something cold, final. I looked at Olivia. She wasn't the mastermind. She was just a pawn. I wiped my mouth with my napkin, set it down neatly on the table, and stood. Slowly, deliberately. Olivia's confidence wavered, just slightly. Aren't you going to say anything? She asked, almost uncertain now. I looked at her, at Lucas, at the family who had leeched off me for years. And I smiled. Not a word. No screaming. No cursing. No outbursts. Just a simple, knowing smile. Then, I turned and walked away. And that was the last time they saw me. The next morning, they woke up to a nightmare. Their credit cards declined. Their bank accounts frozen. Their cars repossessed. Their house, my house, was already on the market. Olivia called. Again and again. Voicemail. Her father raged, demanding answers. Her brothers begged, bargaining like desperate men at a losing table. Her sister, the ever-jealous one, started whispering poison against Olivia, trying to save herself. By midday, they realized what had happened. I wasn't just gone. I had erased them. As I sat in my private jet, Watching the clouds drift below, my phone buzzed one last time. Olivia. I let it ring. Then I smiled as I powered the phone down. I didn't need revenge. Revenge requires effort. All I had to do was leave and let them drown in the consequences of their choices. Because in the end, some betrayals can never be forgiven. And some men, they never look back. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to curse. I didn't even need to lift a finger in anger. All I had to do was disappear. And as I left, I watched, not in rage, not in regret, but in satisfaction, as Olivia and her wretched family unraveled without me. The next morning, chaos erupted in my former home. It started small. Olivia, still basking in her delusion, woke up late, stretching in silk sheets she no longer owned. She reached for her phone, expecting to scroll through her morning shopping lists. Declined. She frowned. Maybe it was an error. She tried another card. Declined. Her heart skipped. She tried logging into her bank app. Account not found. A chill ran through her. From the hallway, a loud curse rang out. One of her brothers. More shouting. More panic. Then came the sound of a car alarm. Olivia rushed to the window just in time to see a tow truck hauling away her precious Bentley, a car I had bought. Her father stormed down the stairs in his robe, phone in hand. What the hell is going on? Her mother was next, clutching her pearls, as if sheer disbelief would bring back the money that no longer existed. One by one, they realized they had nothing. I had made sure of it. At first, Olivia laughed. She tossed her hair over her shoulder, crossing her arms, smirking as she sat on the now worthless couch in the living room. Ethan's just playing a game, she said. He'll be back. He needs me. Her family wasn't convinced. Then call him, her mother snapped, pacing. So, she did. Again, and again, and again. Voicemail. Disconnected. Her smirk faded. By noon, desperation set in. They tried accessing my accounts, but they were locked out. They tried getting into the house deed records, but I had already transferred ownership. They tried calling lawyers, but they had no money to pay them. And then, the real cracks started to show. By evening, the house that had once been filled with fake laughter and empty luxury became a battlefield. Her brothers were the first to break. Two reckless fools who only knew how to survive off stolen wealth. The younger one, David, slammed his fist on the kitchen table. I told you not to push him too far. His older brother, Michael, sneered. Shut up, idiot. You were happy to take his money too. David snapped. Yeah, and now it's gone, and we have nothing because of your greedy sister. Olivia scoffed. Oh, so now it's my fault? Michael, ever the arrogant one, stood up. Yes, it's your fault. You had everything, and you just had to push for more. Then he did something Olivia never expected. He lunged, a hard slap across her face. Olivia stumbled back, stunned. Her own brother had hit her. The golden princess was no longer untouchable. Their mother gasped but did nothing to stop it. Their father sat in silence, rubbing his temples as though he regretted everything. That was when Olivia finally understood. They never loved her. They tolerated her, because of me. Without me, she was nothing to them. You ruined everything, Michael seethed, stepping closer. We had it all, and you threw it away because of your stupid pride. Olivia held her cheek, her eyes flashing. I did what was best for me. David scoffed. Yeah? And what about us, Olivia? What about your son? For the first time all day, Lucas's name was mentioned. The boy who wasn't mine. The boy I had raised as my own. And yet, nobody had even thought about him. A 5-year-old child sat in the corner, confused, watching his mother be blamed, watching his uncles turn into monsters, watching everything he knew fall apart. It was a cruel sight. And yet, I felt nothing, because in the end, I had raised an entire family of beggars, and now they had nothing left to beg for. I sat in a luxury suite miles away, watching the fireworks of their downfall through a private investigator's updates. They're starting to fight amongst themselves, sir. Olivia tried to call an old lover. He didn't answer. Her brothers are planning to sell what little they have left. I swirled my glass of bourbon, staring out at the city skyline, and I smiled. Not in vengeance. Vengeance takes effort. Not in satisfaction. Satisfaction is fleeting. But in clarity. I had wasted years on these people. Now, they would spend the rest of their lives regretting they ever took me for granted. And the best part? I wasn't even done yet. Desperation makes people dangerous. It strips away their illusions, forces them to face what they've ignored for years. And in Olivia's case, it made her reckless. Because after her brothers turned on her, after her mother refused to meet her eyes, and after her father stormed out of the house with a look of pure disgust, she had no one left. No one except him. The real father of the boy I once believed was mine. A fool's hope she showed up at his doorstep just before midnight. Hair a mess, face streaked with dried tears, wearing the same designer dress I had bought her years ago. Except now, it looked pathetic. She knocked frantically. No answer. She knocked again, louder. Finally, the door creaked open, and there he stood, her lover, the man she threw me away for. James Carter, the younger man, the real man, as she once mocked me. He had everything she claimed to want: youth, strength, passion. And yet, the moment he saw her standing there, broken and desperate, he let out a tired sigh. He wasn't happy to see her. He wasn't waiting for her. He was annoyed. "James, please," Olivia whispered. "I have nowhere else to go." James leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "And what do you want me to do about that?" His voice was flat. Olivia blinked. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. "Lucas is your son," she reminded him. We could be together now. Start fresh. You always said you loved me, right?" James let out a short, bitter chuckle. "I never said that." Silence. Olivia's breath hitched. "What?" James exhaled through his nose, running a hand over his face, as if dealing with her was a chore. "Olivia, I never loved you. We were having fun. That's it. You knew what this was." Her lips trembled. But Lucas is your problem, not mine." And just like that, the last thread holding her together snapped. She begged. Right there, on the doorstep of the man she betrayed me for. She begged. "James, please. I left everything for you. I ruined my life for you." He gave her an empty stare. No sympathy. No guilt. Nothing. "That's not my fault." Then he stepped back, and without another word, he closed the door in her face and locked it. By the time she returned to what was left of her home, she looked hollow. But she wasn't met with comfort, only more betrayal. Her father was gone. Her brothers were gone. Her mother barely acknowledged her as she packed a suitcase for herself. And then there was her sister, Emily, the one person Olivia had always treated as a servant, the quiet one, the forgotten one, and now the only one left. Olivia collapsed onto the couch, face buried in her hands. Emily stood in the doorway, watching her. And then, in a voice that wasn't filled with pity, but with something else entirely, she spoke. "You don't deserve to cry." Olivia's head shot up. "What?" Emily took a slow step forward. "You heard me." "Emily, please, not now. I've lost everything." "Good." A beat of silence. Emily's lips curled in something dangerously close to a smirk. "You know," she mused, "I used to envy you. For years, I watched you live a life you didn't deserve. Marrying Ethan, spending his money, treating him like he was disposable." She leaned down, voice sharp as a blade. "I loved him." Olivia's breath caught. "What?" Emily smiled, a bitter, resentful smile. "I loved him. I wanted him. And if you had any idea what was good for you, you would have worshipped him. But you didn't. You threw him away like he was nothing." She straightened up. "So now, you have nothing. And for the first time in Olivia's life, she was truly alone. No husband, no lover, no family, no future, only regret. I sat in my quiet penthouse, swirling a glass of whiskey, staring out into the city lights, and I laughed. Not out of joy, not out of victory, but because, in the end, Olivia had betrayed herself. I didn't have to lift a single finger. She ruined her own life. And I was finally free. There's a certain peace that comes with letting go. For the first time in years, I could breathe. No screaming. No insults disguised as jokes. No ungrateful hands reaching into my pockets, expecting more. Just the sound of the waves outside my new beachfront home. The warm sun against my skin. The soft crash of the tide rolling in. The scent of fresh morning air untainted by the weight of past mistakes. This was freedom. I didn't look back. Not once. While Olivia spiraled into ruin, I rebuilt my life in a quiet coastal town far away. I bought a beautiful home on a secluded beach, a home I chose for myself, not one dictated by Olivia's lavish taste or her family's expectations. I woke up when I wanted. I ate what I wanted. I spent money on myself for the first time in decades. And for the first time in years, I smiled without it feeling forced. I had no regrets. Not about leaving. Not about cutting them off. And certainly not about watching them burn. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the ocean in shades of gold and crimson, I found myself sitting at a small cafe along the beach. It was there that I saw her. A face I hadn't seen in over 30 years. Clara, my first love. The woman I let go of all those years ago when life pulled us in different directions. She was older now, of course, but so was I. And yet, when she turned and saw me, the way her eyes lit up made me feel like a young man again. Ethan? Her voice was breathless. I smiled. It's been a long time, Clara. And just like that, a chapter of my past that I had long thought closed, reopened. Clara had never married. She had built a life of her own, traveled, worked, and experienced the world in ways Olivia never could. She was independent. She was strong. She was real. For the first time in years, I was with someone who didn't want me for my money. Someone who wasn't waiting for me to die just to take everything I had. We spent days walking along the beach, talking about the past, laughing over old memories. It felt natural. It felt like home. And for the first time in a long time, I thought, maybe I can love again. Maybe I never really stopped. One night, I was sitting by my fire pit, watching the flames flicker against the dark sky, when my phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated, but curiosity got the best of me. Ethan. I knew that voice. It was an old friend, someone I hadn't spoken to since I disappeared. And what he told me made me laugh. Man, you really did a number on them, he chuckled. It's been chaos ever since you left. I leaned back in my chair, swirling the whiskey in my glass. Oh, her brothers are drowning in debt. Turns out they were using your money to fund their gambling addiction. Now that you're gone, they owe a lot of dangerous people a lot of money. I smirked. How unfortunate. Her father left, packed his bags, and walked out on her mother. And the best part? He chuckled darkly. Her sister, Emily, is trying to track you down. I paused. Emily? Yeah. Apparently, she thinks she can take Olivia's place. She's been telling everyone that she was the one who truly loved you, that she should have been your wife instead. I let out a low chuckle. Oh, Emily. How desperate must she be to chase after the man her sister betrayed? How pathetic must Olivia feel, knowing that even her own sister is trying to replace her? Poetic justice. But Emily was making a critical mistake. She thought I could be manipulated twice. She thought I would entertain the idea of picking up another broken, greedy woman from that same cursed family. As I ended the call, I glanced at Clara, sitting across from me, sipping her wine, unaware of the ghosts trying to claw their way back into my life. And in that moment, I knew. I had already won. I didn't need revenge anymore. Because my greatest revenge was simply this. I was happy. And Olivia? She would spend the rest of her miserable life knowing that she had everything and lost it all. They say pride comes before the fall. And Olivia? She fell hard. When I walked away, I left her and her family with nothing. No money, no home, no security. The same people who used to sneer at me for being too old and controlling were now scrambling for survival. But Olivia? She suffered the most. The woman who once bathed in luxury now struggled for scraps. She worked odd jobs, waitressing, cleaning, anything she could find. But no matter where she went, people whispered behind her back. Wasn't she the rich woman with that old businessman? Guess she wasn't so smart after all. Serves her right. The humiliation cut deeper than any poverty ever could. She had laughed when I left, thinking I would come crawling back. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, reality sank in. I was never coming back. One night, Olivia sat at the small, run-down apartment she shared with her mother. Her father was gone. Her brothers had vanished. Her sister, Emily, was too busy trying to track me down. And Olivia? She had nothing left. As she sat at the kitchen table, staring at the single can of soup they had left, she turned to her mother with empty eyes. "Why did you make me do it?" she whispered. Her mother scoffed. "Do what?" "Cheat on Ethan. Ruin everything. You told me I needed a younger man." Her mother sighed, rubbing her temples. "And I was right. Look at you now. You're a single mother. No rich husband. No security." Olivia clenched her fists. "And what about Lucas?" At the mention of his name, her mother's expression shifted. Tension filled the air. Olivia sat up straighter. You always knew, didn't you?" Her mother didn't answer. "Lucas, his real father wasn't even the neighbor, was it?" A silence so thick and suffocating filled the room that Olivia felt like she was drowning. Her mother finally looked her in the eye and said it, the truth that shattered everything. "No, he wasn't." Olivia's heart stopped. "Then who?" "A stranger," her mother said flatly. "A one-night stand you barely remember. You were drunk. You never even got his name." The world blurred. Her whole life was a lie. She had destroyed her marriage, betrayed the only man who ever truly cared for her. For what? For a faceless man she would never even recognize on the street? Her mother's lips curled in a sneer. "Ethan was never your problem, Olivia. You were your own problem. And now? You're paying the price." Something inside Olivia broke. She let out a guttural scream, knocking the bowl of soup to the ground. She had nothing. No husband. No money. No family. Not even the father of her child. She had been used and discarded by everyone, including the people who claimed to love her. And now? She was truly alone. That night, Olivia sat in the darkness of her tiny apartment, clutching a single piece of paper. A letter. Her last chance. Her final hope. Ethan. She hadn't spoken his name in months. Hadn't dared to. But now, as she wiped away her tears, she pressed her pen to the paper and began to write. "Dear Ethan, I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't even deserve a response. But I have to try. I was a fool. I let people poison my mind, and in doing so, I destroyed the only real thing I ever had. You. I lost everything, Ethan. My family turned on me. The man I thought was Lucas' father wasn't even the real one. I was lied to, manipulated. But none of that changes what I did to you. I don't expect you to ever look at me the same way again. I don't expect you to come back. But if you ever had even a shred of love left for me, please, just let me hear from you. Even if it's just to tell me that you hate me. Because the silence? It's killing me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Olivia." They started arriving 3 weeks after her fall. At first, I ignored them. But Olivia, she was persistent. Letter after letter. Each one dripping with regret. Each one a desperate attempt to claw her way back into my life. Too little. Too late. The first letter was filled with rage. "Ethan, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but this is childish. Fine, you left. But that doesn't mean you can just disappear. You owe me a conversation. You owe Lucas a conversation. He asks about you every day. He cries at night, calling for his father. You're the only father he's ever known, and now you're just gone? Come back. At least for him. We need to talk. Olivia. I stared at the letter, then tore it in half. Lucas wasn't mine. I had poured my love, my time, and my life into a child who was never even mine to begin with. I would not be manipulated back into her web. I tossed the torn pieces into the fireplace and watched them burn. A week later, another letter arrived. This one was different. Ethan, I know you read my last letter. I was angry. I shouldn't have said those things. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need to say this anyway. I was wrong. About everything. I let my family ruin us. I let their greed and jealousy poison what we had. And worst of all, I let my own stupidity and selfishness destroy the best thing that ever happened to me. You were always too good for me. I see that now. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I want you to know that I regret everything. Olivia, I didn't tear this one up, but I didn't respond either. The letters kept coming. They grew longer, more pleading, more pathetic. One was filled with stories of her suffering. She wrote about her mother's betrayal, how her family had abandoned her, how she had gone from wearing diamonds to scrubbing toilets just to survive. She described nights without food, how Lucas asked why they didn't have a warm bed anymore. She painted herself as a victim, but I knew the truth. She wasn't a victim. She was the architect of her own misery. Then came the final letter, the most desperate of them all. Ethan, I can't take it anymore. I can't live like this. Every day, I wake up in a world I don't recognize. A world without you. I don't expect you to take me back. I don't expect you to love me again. But please, just write back. Even if it's to tell me that you hate me. I just need to hear from you. Because if I don't know if I can keep going. Please. Olivia. I held the letter for a long time. Then I folded it neatly and placed it in the drawer with the others. Still, I didn't respond. One evening, as I sat on my balcony overlooking the ocean, Marissa walked in. My old love. The woman I had reconnected with after all these years. She held the stack of letters in her hands. She had found them. She sat across from me, flipping through the pages. Her lips curled into a smirk. So, this is the woman who threw you away, she said, shaking her head. Pathetic. Then she began to read them out loud, mocking Olivia's words, laughing at her desperation. Oh, Ethan, I've lost everything. Please, Ethan, I'm so sorry, she said in a high-pitched voice, giggling. She tossed one letter into the air, letting the wind carry it away. Then she leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. Tell me the truth. Do you even feel bad for her? I looked at Marissa, then at the burning sunset, then at the last letter Olivia had sent. I picked it up, held it for a moment, and then slowly, I tore it into tiny little pieces. I let them fall into the waves below. No, I said simply, because the truth was, I didn't. Years passed, and with them, so did the echoes of the past. I had rebuilt my life in a way I never thought possible. Stronger, simpler, free. My days were filled with laughter, my nights with peace. I no longer looked over my shoulder. I no longer wondered what if, because I knew. I had one. She was nothing more than a whisper now, a fading shadow from a life I had long since left behind. But somewhere, out there, Olivia still existed. And though I never searched for her, news of her fate found me anyway. She had fallen further than I imagined. She had lost everything. Her family had long abandoned her. Lucas had been taken away by the state. She was no longer the arrogant woman who had mocked me in my own home. She was just another forgotten soul, wandering the streets, living in shelters, surviving on scraps. And yet, even after all the pain she caused me, I felt nothing. It was Marissa who found it first. We were sitting on the patio of our seaside home, the place we built together. She was sipping coffee, flipping through the newspaper when she suddenly chuckled. "You should see this." She handed me the paper, and there, on the glossy page, was a photo of us. Our wedding announcement. Marissa and I, standing beneath the sun, smiling. A picture of joy. A picture of closure. I set the newspaper down, thinking nothing of it. But miles away, in some forgotten alleyway, Olivia was staring at that same photo, and she finally understood. That evening, it arrived. The final letter. "Ethan, I saw the news today. You've moved on. You've found your happiness. And for the first time, I truly understand. There is no coming back. There never was. I won't write again. I won't beg. I won't hope. I just wanted to say, I understand now, and I will never bother you again. Olivia." I read it once. Then, without hesitation, I picked up my lighter. The flame flickered, then caught the edge of the paper. The words, the ink, the desperation, it all burned away. I watched as the ashes curled and scattered into the night breeze. And then, I smiled, because some betrayals can never be forgiven, and some men never look back. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more captivating tales. Share your thoughts below. I'd love to hear how you felt about Ethan's journey and the lessons learned. And if you know someone who'd appreciate a story like this, feel free to pass it along. Until next time, take care and remember, some chapters are meant to end, but the next one is always waiting. See you soon.